Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Hearts of Men podcast, sponsored by the Empowering Perspective community. We're your hosts for this evening's conversation. Starting on my left, you got my main man, the Uncle Junior himself, Mr. Build Your Creed, Garfield Martin. Over to my right, you got Mr. Rolling down the street, the brother minister himself, Mr. Roland Walker. Below me, these two fine young gentlemen right here. I'm just excited to talk about them. So on the left side, you got across the table with Mr. Chris McClellan, my brother from another mother. And then to his right, you got the son of Timothy, Mr. Tawami Gaddy. I'm sorry. I almost forgot to introduce myself. I am. I am Dwayne Dwight, the mindset coach. Gentlemen, how you guys doing today, man?
Doing great.
I'm
doing
well.
great.
I'm well. I'm well.
I'm doing good. I am doing super well.
Bless.
I love it. I love it. Man, it's
Super
always
bless.
good to see everybody on this Friday evening. And as always, we're excited to be here with you. Listen, shout out to everybody in the chats already, man. Good to see you guys. Cassandra, good to see you. Michelle Ray, good to see you. Bernadette, good to see you. What's up, cousin? Yolanda Shaw, good to see you. I'm sorry, Yolanda Leaf. I don't want a husband fussing at me. All right, Yolanda Leaf, good to see you. Lisa Keys, good to see you. Let me see who else. I don't want to miss anybody. Charlotte Jordan, how you doing? Always good to see you. There he goes smiling again. Brother Hayes, good to see you, my friend. Welcome back to the show. Listen, we're excited because this is part two of a conversation we started off last week. Now, I will tell you, if you did not get the opportunity to listen to that show, I'm just going to tell you, go back and take a look at it because it was a phenomenal conversation. And by request of Miss Charlotte Jordan, we decided to bring it on over and do it again, part two tonight. Good to see you, Miss Verlene McCoy, Queen V. Welcome to the show. And so we're going to do it again. Now, just as a reminder, what we talked about last week, we again thoroughly enjoyed talking about it. It was a tough one, but it was good. And we talked about childhood trauma and how it relates to your worldview as an adult. So with that being said, the conversation that we talked about, we had a few talking points, right? And I only got a chance to go over 3 of the 5 that I want to talk about, but that's okay. We're going to finish it today. So last week we talked about childhood trauma and it makes you more pessimistic, right? Childhood trauma makes you feel more alone. And lastly, it also makes you self-sabotage. Then we entertained some questions that came out of the chat. There were some great questions. And then we had a question of our own that we went into. So with that being said, now we're going to kick it off today. And again, like I did last week, I like the kind of baseline understanding. So first and foremost, this is what we're talking about, uncovering the truth of how childhood trauma shaped your worldview or shaped your view on life. As always, like we said last week, some of these conversations can be a little heavy. If you start to feel a little anxious, a little anxiety, or whatever the case may be, that's okay. Just take a deep breath. If you got to get up, take a walk around, that's okay. Just understand that none of these are focused on you specifically. These are things that everybody experienced to some degree or another. So again, just lean back, take a deep breath, and then just consider some of the things that we said. And moving forward, of course, I like definitions. Childhood trauma is the experience of a single or multiple events by a child that is emotionally painful or distressful, which often leads to seriously lifelong damages to physical and mental health. Childhood trauma has become, and I want to stress this piece, childhood trauma has become a major social public health problem worldwide. I want to make sure we understand that. Everybody has experienced childhood trauma. No one is exempt. The sad truth is it affects a lot more people than most of us are even aware. Some examples of childhood trauma include these, and these are some of the things we talked about, and we had a great conversation before we got into this evening as well. So just keep in mind, like childhood trauma can exist from one means to another, and we're going to get into it. Not sure how much we're going to get finished tonight, based upon the fellows' conversation backstage, but we're going to do our best. So picking up right where we left off from. Tonight, we're going to start with this particular talking point here. So, childhood trauma takes away your sense of safety and security, right? Trauma of any kind can have lasting psychological damage, and when you experience it at such a formative time in your life like childhood, it can take years to unlearn and undo. Being traumatized takes away a person's sense of safety and security, which is crucial to a child's development because it's what bonds them to the significant people in their lives, and encourage them to explore the world and fulfill their potential. Without this sense of safety and security, they might grow up to become overly timid, anxious, and fearful, or overly attention and approval seeking. With that being said, gentlemen, the first question that I'm going to drop in your lap, and I'm gonna put it in the chat as well because I want to hear what you guys are thinking as well. With that being said, the first question is: men may find safety and security in the idea of relationship, not the person. How can young men unlearn this habit and relearn a more effective way of being?
Hmm.
Now, when you say relationship, are you talking man and the man and woman relationship, or are you talking just relationships in general?
Yes. All of it.
Hmm. I said this before. Isolation. Just pulling yourself out of it. Especially when you know that there's a feeling in your stomach that's telling you that something is wrong. Don't ignore that feeling. The feeling is there for a reason. It's valid. So explore it. Find out what that is. And sometimes that means you got to get away from everybody. It ain't because you love them any lesser or you mad at them. It's because you need to figure some things out. And that's okay. Be antisocial for a while. I mean, check in, let them know that you all right, but also let them know that, hey, I'm going through something. So I kind of need my space. I'll come back around when I got my head on I'll come back around when I got my head right. The
Yeah.
people that really, really care, the people that really love you, they'll be like, all right, call me if you need me. And then you got the ones that'll get an attitude with you because your presence in their life was their validation. They
Mm.
needed you. You understand what I'm saying? And that ain't just man and woman. That's mom and son. That's all the relationships. Woman, friend, all of that. You were around for some type of validation or to try to make that person feel like they was better than somebody.
Mm.
You
Good
understand what I'm
point.
saying?
I do.
Remove, yeah, like remove yourself, and you'll figure some things out. And like I said, the real ones will be around. The real ones will probably ask you what took you so long.
Mm.
Hmm.
That's the
I think
conversation I've been having. You understand what I'm saying? That's the
Yeah.
conversation I've been having. Hey man, what took you so long? Figure that out and come on back because we miss you.
I think for me, I've experienced something on the lines of this when it came to my father, because my father he had some demons he had to deal with, and growing up seeing it firsthand, being a part of it firsthand, it kind of established some things with me where I didn't realize it until later when I finally received someone that was a father figure showing the attention and teaching me lessons. It became one of those where I put him on such a pedestal where anything he said was gold, even when I knew it wasn't right. It was like, okay, I gotta agree with it because he said it. And it came to a point to where I seen how it was damaging me as a man, because it's like, okay, I'm a man and I'm seeking your validation by allowing you to continue to tell me that it's raining while somebody's urinating on my head. Like, no, I can't go with that. I got to go with the truth of the matter, and not just what you say, just simply because I hold you in such high esteem because you've been what I was lacking growing up.
Mm.
Hold on.
No, you good. You good. I'm just patiently waiting because I want people to kind of process what's actually being said. I don't want to just rush from point to point, right? But as you're getting your thoughts together, I like the idea of this because one of the things, in my opinion, the key to start the kind of stands out to me is finding that men may find safety and security in the idea of relationship, not the person. So your mental image of what relationship is to you may poison the well when it comes down to what a relationship looks like to another person. So I think sometimes, like Chris said, sometimes you may need to take a step back and recalibrate your idea of relationship. I think we talked about it last week, to where sometimes, well, not in that last week, I think we talked about it a few weeks ago. Sometimes we have to realize that our idea of relationship was false, coming from wherever source document we got that from. And if it looked like Cupid, if it looked like, mom doing all of, labor at home, and dad just working, and then he come home and all he do is sit down and watch TV, then that may be a person's idea of relationship. But then when you go to intertwine your life with somebody else, or you start having friends afterwards, then you're looking at them through the lens of that perspective. And you're thinking, when you join your life with a person, that, well, I'm a man, so I don't cook, I don't wash dishes, I don't sweep the floor. That's your job. I cut the grass. You don't cut the grass, right? That's what I do. So, that idea can kind of, it can kind of poison the idea of relationship. And then you kind of confine people to your own perspective, which isn't the true nature of relationships. So like Chris said, take a step back and then just kind of catch your thoughts, kind of have a good understanding of what that looks like, what relationship is. What is a healthy relationship, a relationship that allows both people to flourish? Once you start entertaining that and thinking on that, and then trying to find a ways to where you can best express yourself under that umbrella. Now what you're doing is you're realizing that relationship isn't as restrictive as once you thought it is. Like, I know people, and depending upon where you go, people fight the idea of gender roles. I'm not opposed to gender roles if that's what works in your relationship, but it requires a conversation, of understanding in the beginning, right? Because if we don't have that, then what you're going to have is a lot of bickering and fighting about what one person want the other person to do. So take that step back, recalibrate your thought, and then when you get with that person, sit down and you guys compare your ideology about relationship before you decide to go forward.
Yeah. Can I back up a little bit and kind of break this down to as to why men find safety and security in the idea of relationships and not the person?
Absolutely.
All right, so I'm gonna go back to a little bit in childhood. So um because of how things were, good, bad, or different, there was a point in my life where I did not want to be like my father, right? So let's say that was due to some childhood trauma. Fast forward, um, that affected the safety and security just in relationships with women and different things like that, because um maybe he wasn't around, or the family structure may not have been together at all the time. So what happened was that caused me that when I moved forward, I focused on the relationship, and being like, when I found out my first wife got pregnant, right? Pretty much there was pretty much I knew I was going to get married at that point, because I wanted to raise my child, because I didn't want to be like my father. So what happened was, I in turn stayed in the relationship a lot longer than what I should have, because I was wanting the safety and the security of the relationship. I didn't look and research the values, her strengths, different things like that she brought to the table or didn't bring to the table. My focus was on, can I be a father to my child? You know what I mean? And I don't want to be like my father. You know what I mean? I want to stay married. I don't want to be doing this or that. So because of all of those things, I think it forced me to stay in a relationship a lot longer than what I should have. And then going forward, to unlearn all of those things, how can young men unlearn the habit and relearn a more effective way? Is one is to go out and try to seek information, and if you can, and continue to grow. If you continue to grow, I honestly think that it will come to you. You will find it. You will find the answers. You will find the clues, because if you're growing and that person is not, eventually you're going to come across some information that they may not be ready for, or they can't understand, because you've grown. And it's not to say the other person is dumb or ignorant, but maybe they hadn't been focused on trying to grow themselves.
I like that.
Whew. Y'all brothers are hitting it on the head, if you ask me. But I want to say when we and I'm gonna deal with the latter part because I think coach, well, both you coaches dealt with the why do men find safety and security in relationships. But on the latter, I would say we have to figure out what it is we're looking for in relationships that provide that security and safety that we're looking for. I think for some men it might be, if my family looks successful as a family, as a man, I feel better than what I was presented with growing up. Um, or I out achieved my parents or whatever that case may be. But I think we got to get back to normalizing men either seeking professional help and or building a team around them that's not afraid to help them and hold them up, because the moment you get into a relationship, especially with a woman looking for safety and security, if you can't provide that, you're hurting her in the relationship as well. And I don't think we speak of that because that woman is getting into that relationship looking for the same thing from you as a man by default. May or may not be from trauma, but by default they expect the man. And the whole men don't cry thing is not from men not supposed to be stonewall, but it's because we're supposed to be able to provide that emotional balance to that woman, to that family, to that house. So for us the conversation is different among men than it usually is in a household. So we have to be able to seek our own mental health, and and we need to be honest with each other that we just don't have it. Bro, you're not prepared to be nobody husband. Bro, you're not prepared to be nobody father. You need help. Because what kind of security, like you said, it's not from the woman we're looking for, it's from the relationship. And that's true. But we have to have that honest corner that tells us that you're not ready so that we can be more self-aware, seek that help we need so we can provide those things we need for our family, for that house, for that relationship, for that brotherhood, whatever it is.
I knew one of you would do it. So now I'm gonna ask the question because you kind of you opened up a can. So where do I get this information from if I don't have a man in the house that trained me up in the ways that I should go, right? I don't have a man in the house that taught me what men do, how men take care of the family, things of that nature. Like, where do I go get that information? Like, am I just supposed to go find? Like I said, I was fortunate to have my uncles, right? But where do some people who don't have that, where do they go find that information at?
This is where the isolation comes into play, because the isolation will put you in a place where you don't have any choice but to think about, okay, what's missing? What's wrong? What is this? Why do I keep feeling this? Why do I keep doing this? Why does this keep happening? You understand what I'm saying? Like, what started this in the first place? And then you go back to what started it. And then you figure out, okay, that's what started it. What's the opposite of that? And then you go look for the opposite of that. You understand what I'm saying? That's why I really, really stress isolation, because a lot of us, men and women, don't know how to go through life without being in some type of relationship with somebody. Like, they have to have a woman, they have to have a man, they have to have a friend, they have to have these things. That it's like they're looking for happiness and validation in that little hole that's missing inside of them in somebody else. Go
But
figure,
can I
go
ask a
fill
question,
that
Chris?
hole first. Yeah.
Like, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I really need more information. Where do I learn that self-awareness? Because information that I'm not aware of, how do I address it? If
See,
I'm not
that's
self-aware enough to know that I have these issues when I go into that isolation, now where do I get this information from? I'm not being combative. I'm just asking for real.
so you're asking, where do you go to do that? Is that what you're asking?
I think he's asking does he get
Because
the information to become what he's looking to become?
He has to figure out what he wants to be first. That's where it starts. You have to figure out self and stop looking outside for self. And sometimes, and you also have to take some self-responsibility of what's going on in your life. Directly or indirectly, whatever happened in your life is your fault. It might not, and even if it isn't your fault, like I said when we was backstage yesterday, it is still your personal responsibility to fix it. So that and that comes with a lot of letting go of your ego. You got to let go of your ego. I say this all the time. You have to let go of your ego. Your ego will keep you where you are. Your ego will keep you hurting and hurting other people. And that's something that a lot of people can't do. It's difficult. It is extremely difficult.
Where do young men go to find help? Especially if they don't know that they need help. You know what I mean? I would say for me, at least here's what happened to me. I didn't know. I just had a thought. I had a feeling something just wasn't right. I was just like, there's more to life than this. I didn't read a book. I didn't do anything. For me, it was a feeling. It was a lot of thinking. I'm like, why am I thinking like this? What's going on? I started to become, aware of my mortality. I'm just like, it gotta just be more to life than this. You know what I mean? Like, there was nothing. I didn't get hit with a bolt of lightning. I didn't read a passage, didn't come across the screen and was like, hey, you need to do this. Or maybe it was, I don't know. Maybe it was some subliminal message. I don't know. But I just started looking and watching and just wanting more out of life that I couldn't get just by just having all of my needs met. Once your needs are met, after that, and your future is pretty secure, it's easy to get laxed and be like, I'm good now. You know what I mean? Because I was only looking to be good. Like, my thought process was, hey, as long as the bill's paid and I got $100 in the bank, like, I'm good. Like, that was my mindset. That was my thought process. And then one day I looked at my bank account and I was like, how in the world I make this amount, but I don't have nothing to show for it? It's like, that's ridiculous. You know what I mean? So it probably was a stream of events and different things that happened to where I came to a realization that I needed to do something. And then once I figured out that I needed to do something, then I just started putting the plan into action. And that's when you was talking about going deep, going introvert, different things like that, to kind of find yourself and kind of find out who you are. So that was for me. So honestly, I don't really have a good answer for where men are supposed to go to find places when they don't know that they're supposed to go and find these things. You know what I mean? I don't have the answer for that. I wish I did, because I've been looking for that answer too. So help me out with it. I just want to know it.
See, you talked about that gut feel. That's that gut feeling that I was talking about.
Yeah, but what happens to the dude who don't get the gut feeling? Like, the guy who's 45 years old, he ain't got the gut feeling yet. Like, he's cool with just working, being the way he is, life not working out, he not understanding, like, he in a marriage, a sexless marriage, and they can't stand each other, but they laying in the bed every night, all of these things. Like, he don't know that there's something better out there. And I'm not necessarily saying something better outside of the marriage. He may not even know that he can have even a better marriage and have bliss inside of his own home. He may think this is just how it is because mom and daddy did it like this and they stayed together for 70 years. And because the childhood trauma and everything that they was taught was to stay together no matter what. So how's that dude supposed to get out of this situation when they're taught stay together no matter what?
Because
not asking you, Chris, specifically, just in general.
Go ahead, Tawame. I'm sorry.
No, I was just tagging on with what he said, because a lot of people were taught that divorce is failure, right? Separation is failure. If you're not still with the mother of your children, you failed at life. So when it gets toxic or when it gets bad, when you can no longer pour into that relationship, but in their mind, because of how they were raised, there is no out. That's a dangerous place to be. So now, where does the self-reflection? And I'm not, like I said, I'm not being combative. Is it's easy for us to tell people once we've found our own self-awareness. It's easy to say get self-awareness, but for some, I'll be honest, for a long time, I found out just having good men around me that I was jacked up as a person. Then I was able to be self-aware. Then I was able to reflect, and then I was able to go into a hole and find out where I needed to grow from. But that before part,
I just firmly believe that we as men always have this nagging thought in the back of our head, or this nervous ball of a feeling in our stomach when we know something is wrong, but we just dealing with it anyway. I think we all have that. To have the courage to act on it is something completely different, but we all have it. We just have to have the courage to act on it. And it just now became cool for us to act on it. It's not to keep it real. Lisa brought up therapy and mental health, which is a huge component of it. But even now, men's mental health is a buzz phrase. So much so that there are actual therapists in the marketplace that are just there for a cash grab. Men's mental health is a thing now. You understand what I'm saying? So to me, given that we're around so much information and we have access to so much information, I say, like I said, when we were talking about the elders, we learn something from the youth about how to figure out how to use this thing. And then we map some things out by researching it. It's difficult. And to keep it real, you're going to go down into a very dark place when you do that, because you have to look at all of the stuff that you let happen and you knew you shouldn't have let it happen. Even when it comes to your mom and your dad, you have to think about it like, man, I should have said something. And I should have said something right then.
I'm jumping now. Hey, it's like
I'll mute my mic. I'll mute my mic.
No, y'all good. Y'all own it for real. And I'm a comedian, but I think I received a sign when I went to a corner and I seen this big red octagon and it said stop. Now I'm just joking, but I'm just being anal and silly. But you have to be what you're looking for first and foremost. Before you get into a relationship, you should be what you're looking for. You shouldn't go into a relationship looking for somebody to be something that you aren't. If you aren't faithful, don't expect the other person to be faithful. If you aren't trustworthy, don't expect the other person to be trustworthy. If whatever you aren't, that's what you're going to get. But when it comes to seeking out what you want to become, young boys seek out other men. We seek them out in gangs. We grow up, we go to school. We seen school days. We seek them out in fraternities. We seek them out in other organizations, whether, the pimp culture, the drug culture, whatever the culture is, where you see what you consider positive men or men of influence, you seek that out. So what we have to do is early on is we have to surround ourselves with positive thinking men, positive thinking individuals. So now that exposure says, I want something better than where I am right now. I saw my teacher and he influenced me in this fashion. So man, I want to be somewhat like that. I want to do something like that. Somebody, I think JJ Cotton said, church mentors or wherever, if you can find mentors, that's why we need men in our communities that are positively influencing our youth, because we have all the other influences on TV, all the other influences on the radio, all the other influences are ever before them. So now it takes some of us to get out these four walls and go out and about and just have a conversation, a real conversation. Don't sit up there and go pussyfooting around and trying to act like you higher than them, but let them know I'm on your level, but I've been where you are and I got out of it. It's something better than that. And I agree with you, Chris. You got to isolate yourself. You got to step back and say, man, I want better than this. Because if you don't want better, you will continue to eat crap. You will continue to be a bottom feeder, but you got to want better. And that's not just a man thing, that's a people thing. So when we come to the realization that there is better out there and I deserve it. Some of us have been traumatized so long, we feel we don't even deserve it. My mama was like this. My daddy was like this. His mama, his daddy. So you have a long line of bums, and you say, well, I'm just the next bum in line. I'm just going to do it a little bigger than the last bum. No, you don't have to be like them. You can be bigger and better and not uppity in the same fashion where you realize, like, hey, this is something that I can establish. We always talk about how I'm breaking the cycle. We talk about it financially, but you got to break the cycle of mental abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse. You got to break those cycles to where it's not normal for the little boy to be in his room with the magazines and every sock is hard and stuff. And it's real. You got to get that in your head. I mean, we gotta get so real with these kids to where when you say some things are just simply there for shock value. You gotta sit up there and tell these kids, hey, get off that damn video game. Go wash the dishes, go cut the lawn, go do something. You gotta shake some kids up to where they realize that it's better out there, and I'm not gonna get it sitting down playing on the video game, talking on the phone.
Boy, that Joe got a slick tongue, don't he?
Quick with it too.
Joker just slid that one in there. Then
Real
he
quick.
in shock value. Right after that, I was like, he's like, blah, 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 shock value, and right back to the talking point. I was like, man, that Joker slick.
Hey, that's what he do.
Like the rest of us can't hear.
That's
right.
Hey, check it out. I just want to make sure that I acknowledge everybody who's here. I mean, it is such a good honor to have, brand new people on the show tonight, man. Welcome to the show. Let me make sure I don't want to miss anybody. Terry Morgan, welcome to the show. Leverett, welcome to the show again. Brother Michael Hayes, as always, when he shows up, he completely always add value. Being in a relationship is a distraction in some cases. You have to know thyself in order to do that. A mentor can help you. Relearning anything will take time. Some form of guidance help. Absolutely correct. And that's probably a lot of what you just heard these gentlemen talk about. And they're absolutely spot on. Antoine Lyons, welcome to the show, brother. Always good to see you. Let me see. I don't want to miss anybody. Dexter Allen, welcome to the show, brother. Good to see you. JJ Cotton, man. JJ Cotton is loading it up over here, isn't he? I mean, just adding value instantly coming in the door. Welcome to the show. Again, if this is your first time on the Hearts of Men podcast, look in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. You're going to see a little emblem, a small emblem. Put your cursor over that. You're going to see a flower that says subscribe. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel and share it with somebody because, as you can see, we have already taken the gloves off and we are going after it hard. Listen, I want to make sure I comment on this before we move on to the next because I heard a lot of great points just now. And I don't disagree with anything that you're saying. Uncle Junior, I'm so glad you went that deep into it because I believe you're right. I believe and I've witnessed that we have gotten to a cycle to where we believe longevity is the measure of good relationship. No, it is not. That is a false statement. Longevity it can mean a number of different things. It can mean a good relationship. It can mean a high tolerance level. It can mean a number of different things. I'm sure that there are people out there, and I'm not saying that I know for sure, but I am sure that there are some people out there who exist in relationship and have learned to tolerate each other and just gotten to the point say, nope, I'm not going to divorce them because divorce is frowned upon in our community. So that's a thing. And in my opinion, I don't think anybody should have to live that way. You should not have to live just by coping with one another. That is a form of trauma. Like that's what you do. You get to the point where you just deal with stuff and then just go from one version of trauma to the next. And I'm just going to exist in space until the next thing hits. And when the next thing hits, I'm just going to exist there and then find a way to deal with it and just move on to the. So you're literally existing from trauma to trauma to trauma, hoping none of it is strong enough to break you. And my point is that I just don't believe that that's what we were created to be. I believe that we were created to thrive together, not just cope with one another. And so when you look at it from that perspective, I think what we understand is that we get to the point to where people have traumatic event after traumatic event after traumatic event after traumatic event. But what happens when that happens to you in your childhood years, right? As a child, you start dealing with complex trauma. And so complex trauma in a nutshell is just literally a consistency of traumatic events or long-term trauma. And I'm going to give you a real quick example. We've seen it on TV in like some of these what do you call them? The what channel is it? The life what is it?
Lifetime.
Lifetime. There we go. Right. So
Yeah.
you've seen them in there.
Man
So
hating channel.
there you go.
I
I
wasn't
won't
gonna
say, I
do it. I
won't say
wasn't
that.
gonna say it.
I'll do it. I
I
didn't want
do
to go
it.
there. But listen, you see the deadbeat dad or whatever, he exists in the house and he's sneaking in the daughter room in the middle of the night. And that child has to deal with that over and over and over again. That's an example of complex trauma. And so you have to understand that that has a overwhelming psychological effect. And one of the first things that we understand is that traumatic events such as that hinders your ability for meaning making. Now, what does that really mean? Well, when you start looking at it, I want to go from this idea to this one:
Uh-oh.
absentee or disenfranchised parents. Parents who are not in the home, whether it be man or woman, right? And you look at it from a number of different perspectives. So, first and foremost, because somebody brought it up last week, and I thought it was such an amazing point. Gentlemen, in your opinion, I would like to ask you, what are some potential traumas that a child raised in a foster system will actually face?
Well, I've seen this happen with foster children where they are, and some of them come abused, neglected, and such, but they may be in a situation where they've been abused and they think it's okay, they think it's normal. So I've been around where some of the young people will be over sexualized. They will automatically gravitate towards whatever sex that they receive that approval from. They gravitate towards it and they think pleasing that person is what's necessary to stay in the home. So I've seen that, and I've seen where there was a child in the home, and to because how society is now, they would say certain things that didn't happen because they knew they would get a response. So it made the parents, especially the father, reluctant to be around it. Even when because I had three daughters right off the rip, and when my she 25 now, but when she was a baby, I'm watching my baby, so that's all I'm thinking about. But I'm a boy, so I ain't thinking, oh, you can't take this soap and put it in her huna, because then next thing you know, she having issues. So then when my baby crying, I'm automatically thinking, because of my upbringing, man, if she starts saying this outside of home, the first person they coming to is me, and they thinking I'm touching her. They thinking I'm this. So automatically, I'm like, hey, you watch them girls up. You do this with them kids, but that's not reality. And we have to get to a point to where we gotta teach a certain level of distance, and uh, when it comes to the opposite sex, there are certain things that, especially if you aren't the parent, you shouldn't even be around doing. It's like certain things you need to hold. Hey, wait for your mom to get home. Wait for whomever to get home. Whether it be stepfathers or whomever, you should always be thinking, I still have to protect myself. And how is this looking to the outside?
Yeah, I like that. You ready to go, Chris?
No, sir. I'm this is where I learn.
Okay. I first want to start off with saying that it's easy to jump to the negative, but let me back up. So there are a lot of good things that come from children being raised in foster system. I want to start with saying that. I think for this conversation, we're focusing on trying to support the people and we're talking about the trauma. So if anybody's listening and saying, hey, why are you guys just jumping to the negative? Just want to clarify based off of the conversation. We're talking about trauma and we're talking about support. So this is maybe why we're talking about it this way. So with that being said, I was not raised in the foster system. However, I'm speaking from a son of a parent who spent some time in the foster system. My mom has already put it out there on Wednesday night and on Friday nights that my mom was a foster child. I think what one of the things that came with that, at least in my opinion, and based off some of our conversations, is the disconnect, and the ability to not maybe not necessarily connect or to really show or express love in a certain type of way. I think my mom showed us love, but she showed it in a different type of way. It wasn't the Clara Huxtable type of love. Like I said before, my mom, I don't blame my mom for anything. My mom was a product of the system, child care, you know what I mean, foster system and stuff like this. So I think it, because of that, being able to connect with parents, being able to connect with family and different things like that, I think she didn't necessarily get that. So when she became a parent, became my mom, she didn't have those things possibly in her to really give to me or to the rest of us. So that's what I think, that sometimes being children being raised in the foster system can affect those connections and your ability to love others.
And also, I think even when, like, if I go over to Tuami's, he has daughters. I play with the daughters. I hug the daughters. You know, I love on them. But when it comes to certain things, and I tell everybody, that little girl shouldn't be on your lap. You know, if one, no, baby, you can't sit on my lap. Sit your bottom on your own seat, because you have to establish boundaries with children. Go come and just think, oh, it's my parents say they okay, so they okay. But you still have to protect their innocence as well. And when it comes to a foster system, I think, you know, my great grandmother, she raised us. And so it was always in and out, where, you know, you got your cousins there, you got your uncles, your aunties. And growing up, you start to see some people use alcohol or substances as excuses also. So you learn, hey, I have to protect my sisters. I have to protect, even from family, whomever it is. It's my job. Boom, protect. No, yeah, I see what you like to do. I'm not, no, it ain't happening on my watch.
Yeah, I think the foster care system, and Uncle Junior, I'm glad you started off the way you did, right? Because there's a lot of good that can come from the foster care system. The program itself can be phenomenal, but you also have to understand that as a foster care parent, that there's a lot of learning that takes place within that. Um, you have to learn the child, especially the child, because the child isn't a newborn in most cases, right? You have to learn the child. Learning the child is having the necessary level of patience to understand what type of trauma that child been through. If I know, and I'm not a foster child, by the way, but if I recall correctly, um, the parent has to go through classes before. And Michelle, you can probably help with that. I've seen your comment there. The parent has to go through classes before they quasi somewhat. Okay. And they have to go through classes to learn how to be a foster parent. But I think a part of that is also learning the background of the child as much as the system knows as well. That's necessary so that you can consider the possibilities of what the child has been through up to this point. You just can't take that child, pick them up, and plug them into your system and think it's going to be a perfect match. It doesn't work that way. That child may be already suffering mentally from abandonment issues, especially considering how old they are. Imagine what it's like as a child where your mother and your father is not around. That's a very tough pill to swallow. So now your interpretation of love is greatly skewed from what reality is. And then that child may be going through life, just like I think somebody mentioned, I think Uncle Junior was you in the chat, that talked about walking on eggshells. That child may be walking on eggshells, just waiting for the time that you take them back to the system because that child was too much. And then if, let's just say, they're siblings and you got a couple of them together, like two or three siblings, the oldest one is going to be protective of the youngest and probably won't allow you to get close to the youngest one because they feel they have to protect them. So again, it's a lot of things to consider in the foster children And these children haven't even really started a life off yet. It's just beginning. So imagine now that child has grown up and now is an adult. What does relationships look like for that child? What does friendships look like? What does a significant other look like? So it's a man, it is huge when we start talking about children being raised in the foster system. And my heart goes out to every child that was ever raised and is in the foster system, because I don't think the system does enough for them. That's just my opinion.
Um, and the reason why I did this, the hand like that, was me and my sisters ended up with my aunt. So because she was a family member, it was a different process, right? And I'm hoping right now, and out of all the times my internet to mess up, not during this part of the conversation, right? Because from the age 12 on, I no longer lived with any of my parents. Um, unknowingly, I didn't know at the time that my mother was diagnosed with HIV. So she went to a special rehab program to kind of help her with the illness as well as with the drug addiction. Um, and a lot of times, I'm glad that you brought up, Coach, that the parent taking in the child don't always understand what's going on with the child mental, right? I remember when I first moved in with my aunt, I didn't let her discipline me a certain way. You could tell me what I can and can't do in your house like that, but there was a certain amount of discipline you can't do because I was not ready for you to try to take on a disciplinary parenting role because in my mind, my mother was coming back. So that's my parent. We were going to be able to go live with my father. That's my parent. So there was a mental block there that would not allow my aunt to discipline a certain way. And I would be ready to to fight back, like in a sense, like I never hit her, but you know what I'm saying, like punched holes in the wall because she tried to tell me what I could and couldn't do. I wasn't, you know, from that moment on, it was a anger and aggression issue. Every second my mother wasn't there, somebody back at school had to get them hands, being funny, but not. You just couldn't say anything to me at that moment. Oh, your shoes are holy, yeah, and so was your lip. About catch that, right? That was a natural response. And then it was like, oh, he's troubled, he's this, he's that, he's this, he's that. Well, I was a boy who never thought I would be separated from my mother and my sisters and my father, and had to, wait for approval to go see my parents. Like that was awkward. That wasn't reality as I thought it would be, you know. So, but then in that, what ended up happening when she got married and he had kids was I ended up fading in the background. I think that's the part a lot of people don't talk about. I ended up fading in the background. I would come home from camp or whatever, and everyone went clothes shopping for the new school year, and all the money was spent. So I had to find a different means. I had to hit them streets and get some money so I could buy some shoes. I can go to school with last year's outfits on because y'all already know how that is. I had to fight more just to defend the fact that I got on yesteryear's shoes, you know. But these are this then there's a lot more that goes into this conversation, and I'm trying to take my time so I don't ramble on because I got from 12 years on to 18 worth of uh, experience in this situation. But I
But
digress right there.
brother, I appreciate you sharing that. I had no idea, and I hope as everybody's listening, they're appreciating his level of transparency and everybody's level of transparency. Listen, if you're listening right now, Go ahead and hit the like button, hit the share button. And again, if you have not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and subscribe. I just want to make sure I express to each and every one of you how much I appreciate you. Before I move on, Chris, were you about to say something, brother? If you were, I'm sorry I cut you off.
I was, but I listened to Twame and he pretty much spoke to it. Like there's a whole side of it that nobody thinks about. You know what I'm saying? There's a whole side of it. And from working in the family courts and just seeing it, like as it's just crazy to me. Like it's crazy to me. And I'm speaking in general. I'm not saying everybody does this, but it's just crazy to me how children are the children are so low on the totem pole that they're not even seen as children. They're just seen as pieces on a chessboard that can be moved to get some funds or to get some type of control. It's just like, this is how low we've sank either or, you know what I'm saying? This is how low we are as a community. Like, this is crazy. And I'm not saying it just as the community, the melanated community. I'm saying it overall because I worked in the system and I saw it from all sides. It wasn't just us. It was not just us. And to keep it real, some of the other sides were way worse than what we hear. So, like I said, man, it's just crazy to me. And that's another part of childhood trauma, because you could realize that you were one of those pawns, like I did. I'm a product of a single mom home who was used as a control mechanism because she let a guy shoot up the club that didn't want to marry her. And I know he didn't want to marry her because I have a half brother that's 6 months older than me. So she knew something was going on with somebody else before I even came into the picture. That's trauma in itself, to realize that you are only here because let me stop, man. Let me stop.
No, you're good, brother. Well, thank you for that great segue. Go ahead, Roland.
No, I was just going to say, talk about how these children that we speak of, because they're used to taking care of their brothers and sisters, they are thrust into adulthood right off the rip. Because I know I was hanging with my older cousin, so I'm selling dope at 12 and 13. I'm having my first kid at 14. So it's like, when you get into a system and they try to treat you like a child, it's like, hold up, I've been acting like a man my whole life. And now you're trying to put me in a child's position. It's like, no. So when they tried to put me in what's the school called? They send the little bad kids to
alternative ed.
When they tried to send me to the alternative, I walk in there with a nanny coat on and I'm fresh to death because I got a little money. I'm 14 and I'm looking at all these kids around and I'm looking like, man, I may be acting out and I may be bad, but I'm not dumb. And it was like, and then I told him, I said, I'm not going here because these people are stupid. And that's what I was saying to my mother, because my mother had to go with me. I'm like, I'm not going here because that's what they were trying to tell me to go, because I was acting out, was going to school, getting into fights, and I got on the fur coat. You know, I'm 14, and it's like, nah, this ain't go fly. And so that's one of those isolation things. You got to step back and think. Eventually, you got to want better out of life. Because when I started having kids, and the last I had a gun in my chest, all I thought was, who's going to raise my kids? Some people don't think like that. That's what went through my mind. Who's going to raise my kids? Because I've been providing for them since I was here. Now, if I go, I know what's around here.
It's interesting. If anybody else is like me trying to figure out what a nanny goat is, just by all means help me understand, because I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's a fur coat.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
The hood, fur.
Okay,
Dude, I'm like, man, this dude had a fur coat at 14. Like, dude, you was the dude I wanted to be like. That's
I know,
real
right?
talk. Like, I wanted to be the drug dealer. Some of the dudes they had, bro, I did. Like, I was the square.
Yeah.
Like, bro, they had the girls, they had
The
cars,
ones with the
they had
drip.
fur coats, triple fat
Yeah.
gooses. You
It
know what I
was a
mean? Damaged
family business.
jeans.
Everybody wanted to be
But
Nino
see,
Brown before Nino Brown.
Bro, I
but see,
did.
here's the thing though. And here's where I was blessed. I had OGs in my hood that would send me home, say, "Nah, you ain't doing this. You too smart for this. Take your little butt home. You can come here to hoop. We can chop it up. I can tell you about life, but you are not doing this. Take your little butt home."
Yeah. Thank you, Michelle.
That was
Can I?
me. Shout out to Uncle Tony. Go ahead, man.
I'm reading this, and the first thing that came to my mind, because I say this all the time, but the first thing that came to my mind is this conversation we having right now. Is I don't think male and female we have learned how not to project our traumas into our society or into our relationships, and at some point it becomes toxic and dangerous. It creates scenarios in relationships that it don't need to create simply because we don't know how to enter and just let's just be real, we don't know how to intermingle because we haven't dealt with our own stuff. I can't live in a house with you and give you anything past money if I can keep a job if I haven't dealt with my own trauma, my own issues, myself, and vice versa. There are a lot of people out here who are trying to make it work with someone who's just continuing to manipulate manipulate them, continuing to destroy them because they need to argue over everything. You know, the worst one is that separation anxiety, thinking you're gonna leave them all the time, so they never can give themselves to you because they're waiting for you to mess up. And
Or
this
they
is a
look for something that
reality,
ain't there.
right? Yeah. And that hurts relationships and it becomes toxic for one party or the other. And how can we? And I'm pro marriage, right? I'm not pro divorce, but at the end of the day, how can we stick in there without losing our mind or ourselves? We have to fix ourselves before we go into relationships. We're not in the age anymore where mommy and daddy are raising boys and girls to be men and women, husbands and wives, mothers and fathers. They're raising them. They're raising boys to be what we call men, but you know what Roland was. You know, I love you, Ro. And raising our daughters to be Cardi B and Meg Thee Stallion. Like, let's just be real. We see how many times you go on TikTok and you see little 8-year-old girls dancing to songs they don't even know what the words mean, and they should not be doing these dances. But you want them to be somebody's wife and stay in a relationship.
See, all of this is to me, and like I said, I'm pulling myself out of it and then looking at it from an objective point of view. From the way that we're talking about it, it sounds very simple. And it honestly is very simple, but it's not easy. It's not easy. Like going through your childhood trauma, figuring out what triggered it, trying to figure out how to forgive them and move on with your life and not still be pissed off at them and then still be a productive person when that trauma is all you know. It's like tearing off an arm because you've been doing something for so long. You understand what I'm saying? So it's simple, but it's just not easy. Like it's really not. I've been
No.
doing it for 12 years. I'm still doing it. This is a process. And like I said earlier, it just takes a lot of personal responsibility. And like everybody else said, there has to be a feeling that you have that you know that this is not it and I deserve better. Or even that this isn't making me happy. This is actually hurting me. Why am I sitting here still tolerating this when I know it's hurting me? You understand what I'm saying? It's a self responsibility thing to me. But like I said, it's tough. It's hard, man. It's really, really hard.
But just as you said, if I love you as a brother, I have to realize too it's hurting you.
Mhm.
What kind of friend am I if I can't treat you right? If I can't reciprocate what you pouring out into me? All my wife, girlfriend, or kids, I can't do nothing for you. I'm hurting you, the people I love, just as well as I'm hurting me. At some point, we got to care about those around us too, and realize we hurting
See,
us, man.
and that's why I said last time that it's selfish of somebody to bring somebody into a relationship when you going through that. It's selfish. It shouldn't happen. Why would you bring somebody in your life when you have all of this turmoil going on? Why would you do that? Just to have somebody? You got to have somebody that bad that you are willing to drag them through all of your nonsense and
Goes
and
back to the
virtue.
trauma.
I'm like I said, man, I'm a lowest common denominator kind of dude, and all of this sounds simple, but I can understand why it's not being done on such a massive scale because it ain't easy. Like it's not. It's not easy.
See, you done, Chris?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm muting my mic again.
Okay. To jump on this, the biblical question, and I try to stay away from these questions because
Yeah, I
I just
wanted that one
go.
too.
Oh boy. Let me go ahead and get this ready. Let's go.
We need to stop allowing other people to teach our children Bible first. We need to get in it first. We need to understand it first. Because what we do, we send our teenagers, what we wait till they are feeling themselves and they sexually active and all this other stuff. And then we allow somebody to teach them it is better to marry than to burn. Well, dang, you just told them it ain't about love. It's not about respecting the person. It's not about having a relationship. In order to have sex, get married. That's what you're teaching them. And that's a bad principle. Because what's going to happen is they not going to know that person, but they going to know they make them feel good. And feelings dwindle. So if you teach your children how to respect themselves, respect their body, respect the other person, it changes the dynamic of when they look for a relationship. Because outside of trauma, when you look for a relationship, a lot of these people going to get married at a young age going because they want to do it. They felt good when they did it, and their mama done guilted them into it. Oh, you gonna shotgun wedding, you gonna marry her, or a pregnancy happened, and then that's on the same in the same vein as abortion because we wasn't ready. You wasn't ready to do it. You wasn't ready for the act and all that. At the end of the day, it's all sin. Nobody like to call it sin, but it's sin. The left side like to say, "Well, we're for sin." The right side say we're against some sin. But it's not about either one of those sides. It's about you getting in line with the Most High, saying, "Man, let me read this thing, see what it says about me, about our family, and let me teach them to respect themselves, so that I can build up people that are respectful of themselves and know what they want, so they don't just go looking for a wet spot, a hard thing, or anything of that nature. They look for somebody that's going to build with them and have a family and not some splintered pieces of people." Excuse me if that was vulgar.
Can I say something, please?
Of course you can.
I'm going to say this and I'm going to mean this. And then I'm really going to shut up. I'm really sick of how our people use the divine creator's word to justify their nonsense.
Yeah.
I think the divine creator would be ashamed if he saw how we were twisting and using his words to justify the nonsense that we've been doing. And y'all always want to hit somebody with the only God can judge me. Well, if you read the book and actually follow the rules that you're supposed to follow and not the ones that fit into your lifestyle that you think you want to lead, you would know that you already in trouble. What is wrong with you? Quit using his word like that. This is why a lot of people really don't even rock with religion like that, because they see so many of y'all misusing his word. Stop it. Now I'm gonna shut up.
They're quoting Tupac, to be honest
Can
with
I
you.
just
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
can I jump on
Go ahead.
Roland's bandwagon real quick? He opened up a can
He
of worms.
did.
My
He did.
bad. Because you use the scripture, and when Paul's talking to the church in Corinth, and the part about that scripture people forget is better to marry than to burn is he says that I would prefer for you to be like me, which is not married. He's telling them that marriage becomes a distraction for this walk. So before we even take that direction, we have to realize what Paul said before he said marry with a burning. He's saying if you just can't keep your thing to yourself, then marry. But I prefer for you to be like me. And some theologians will tell you he was a eunuch for the Most High.
And to his point, he said that him being single, he could focus on the things of Christ, and married people have to divide their attention between Christ and their spouse. I want to read a piece real quick because you guys went there, and I thought that was such a great question. And this is the scientific version of what they're saying. In childhood, children lack the tools to understand when something bad or dysfunctional is happening, only that they have a only that they have to endure the trauma. As a result, they develop coping skills and mechanisms to deal with it, which leads to adult pathology. Childhood experiences literally impact the biology of the brain. More therapists now are aware of the link between childhood trauma and adult personality traits.
Hmm.
In my experience working with survivors, many end up with similar personality traits. Many of these traits can be explained through other means, such as being neurodiverse. However, if you find that you check off many of these, history might have affected them. Also, many neurodiverse individuals experience trauma. Here are the most common traits I have noticed. Number one, people pleasing behaviors. Number two, high achievement or perfectionism. Number three, constant comparison with others. Number four, avoiding relationships or getting close to people. Number five, jumping from relationship to relationship or staying in a relationship past its expiration date. Number six, too rigid or too loose boundaries. Number seven, the need to fix others. Number eight, disordered eating. Number nine, self medicating with substances or substance misuse. Number 10, feeling of depression, anxiety, or anger that do not go away. Number 11, experiences of chronic pain. Number 12, sensitivity to rejection. Number 13, not feeling seen or heard. Number 14, the need to over explain or make excuses. Number 15, feeling of shame and guilt. Number 16, poor self esteem or self image. Number 17, lack of ability to relate to others or being self conscious. 18, difficulty expressing emotions. 19, fears of social situations. And 20, acting in dysfunctional or unhealthy ways towards others. Now, after reading that list, who that you know, to include yourself, is exempt? Nobody is exempt. I guarantee. He pointed to Twami. Yeah, Twami's the only person, right?
Yeah, that guy.
That guy right there.
Yeah, that guy. Mr.
And
I
Perfect.
raised my hand too early. My bad. I ain't let him finish the question.
nobody's exempt from this list. And this is the point that we're stressing. Like, if you're completely honest with yourself, and going back to that question, one of the biggest issues that we find is that most people have what we would call a trauma bond. It is because of another person's trauma that has attracted you to them, or vice versa. And because you have filled the void that they should have taken the time to fill for themselves, or vice versa, that is the thing that connects you. And so what happens is you don't end up feeling fulfilled until that person is going through a significant event and you're able to help them. You are fulfilled in your ability to help that person or that person is one of the reasons why you're going from, one potential trauma to another. All because we did not take the time to get help in the beginning. Go ahead, Uncle Junior. Oh, I thought you had unmuted, brother. But it's all because we did not take the time to do the necessary work in the beginning before we tied ourselves to a person. And that's one of the big pieces that we want to drive home when it comes down to understanding childhood trauma and how it affects you in your adulthood life. So I think we kind of hit on this one. I think last week somebody touched on this piece here, childhood deprivation. In other words, children, and then Roland mentioned it earlier, and we talked about it with the foster system. So some foster kids, especially when they're siblings, the oldest sibling end up feeling like they have to protect the child. But even in another sense of the word, you find some children, especially when the parent is single parent home and the parent is working, and got to put food on the table, all that other great stuff. One of the oldest children, one of the oldest siblings, have to play mama and daddy in the absence of the parent. So, how can that, when you look at childhood deprivation, how can that affect an adult as they move into their adulthood life, as experiencing connections with other people, so forth and so on?
Guilt.
Mm,
Guilt.
make it make sense.
How can I make it clean too and clean it up without doing too much exposing? Early on, years ago, right? Before I had a clear understanding about just life and just things in general. Um, During high school, my dad went away to the army for about 30 days or so. And then he came back and, not really the army, but um, so while he was gone, we ended up getting split up into like three different houses and stuff. Fast forward, I left to go to the army. When I left to go to the army, there was no other male figures around. Grandfather had already passed. Biological grandfather we never knew. No grandfather on my mom's side. Um, my older cousins had already left for the military. My uncles on my mother's side lived alternative lifestyle, so they were kind of in the streets. My uncles on my father's side were all gone already. So there was one male at home in Roanoke. Well, there was two pretty much there in my hometown. It was me and my brother. Everybody else was gone. So when I left, they left my brother there by himself. So for many years, I took on guilt of saying that the way that my brother lived his life at a certain point in time was my fault, because he didn't maybe not accomplish certain things. That was my fault. I took on that burden for years and years and years. I don't even know if he ever know. I don't think he knows to this day. So mom, don't tell him. I had a talk with my father years ago, and he expressed to me that that wasn't his fault, that was not my fault, that I was not the father, that I was not his parent, and everything good, bad, or different that went on or didn't go on with my brother or myself had nothing to do with me, that was all on him. So it wasn't until he came along and our relationship got back to where we could communicate and be open enough to have the conversation, to where our relationship had matured enough to where I even wanted to talk to him. You know what I mean? So when he told me that a lot of that guilt and stuff had been relieved off of me, like I was in my 30s when this happened. You know what I mean? But I had been carrying that for years. So I would say that sometimes, I didn't have to come in and swoop in and be the father or anything like that. But because my father wasn't around and then I left to go to the military, my brother was still in high school, So there was no men around. So I placed a lot of guilt on myself for a lot of years for certain things.
Mm, that's good.
I I knew a girl growing up that was kind of in the same situation. Um, and watching her, looking at her social media and stuff grown, I would say her desire for immaturity finally showed its face when she had the freedom as an adult to do it. So I think it stifled her ability to grow up. And just look at the way she talk and the things she do. She wants that childhood back that she felt she never got.
Hmm.
That's all I have to that.
And I know, I think because it was a learned behavior and having kids early, we knew we had older siblings to watch us. So when my children got 10, 11, and I was up in Michigan, I got, 4 kids in the house. I ain't about to pay no daycare and stuff. Watch your sisters and brother. And, she knew, and I put so much on her where I told her she was in charge. Now she probably 11. So I would have my other daughter who was 10 at the time. She would be calling me. Vontae said yada yada yada. I say, well, did you do what she told you to do? And I gave her authority to put hands on my other daughter. I was wrong because she's not the parent. But even to this day, she is the parental one. Period. She like with her kids and everything. And I think it may have. I'm glad I figured this out early on, but it may have stifled her when it came to feeling complete, thinking she couldn't be more than this. And so talking about it and everything else helped her understand that, hey, you can still go out there and shoot for the stars. And she a manager at a bank and she's doing well, and she's still parental. That's her first mindset.
I think I'll jump in. I think I think the guilt thing is huge. Uncle Junior and I think it was Lisa who put that out there as well. I think the guilt thing is huge when it comes down to not necessarily having a full childhood experience. Having to take care of per se your siblings, and in some cases, let's just be completely honest. For me, my mother used to work. So there was a lot of times I would come home from school and I had to come home and cook and make sure that my sister was, good to go and she's in the bed. Kitchen got to be clean before mama get home because if not, I got to deal with mama and I don't want them hands put on me like Tawami said, right? So it wasn't that I would say it's a small degree of guilt, but I can't say it was guilt because I was angry with her or anything of that nature. I understood that she was doing what she had to do. Right. But it's almost as like you felt like you missed something in your childhood years. And so a lot of times people get caught up into that space to where they want to kind of make up for lost time as an adult. So they go hang out, do all kind of other stuff and live by the seat of their pants. But you're a full grown adult at this point, then you should have already, kind of healed from that. Sure, you may have missed some aspects of childhood. And when I look back over, I don't think I missed anything, to be honest with you. I still played football. I still got to hang out with my dudes, things of that nature. I still had girlfriends in school and stuff like that. So I didn't really miss anything. It's just that I had an additional responsibility because mama had to work. Mama had to put food on the table. Mama had to put clothes on our backs. So for me, I got to the point of understanding more so than anything. And then when I got to the point to where I could work, because I would tell you my first job was like what they would call JTPA, to I would work at the high school during the summertime. And bro, when I tell you, when I got that first check, I went home to mama. I was like, yo, I said, here you go. And then she was, and it felt good. I'm being honest with you. It felt good to be able to do that because I knew she worked hard. And her response to me was like, thank you, but go do your school shopping. You see what I'm saying? So even though I didn't give her the money, I took some things off of her plate. I think for me, that was the therapy for me. Being able to help her, seeing how hard she worked, how hard she provided. So I found comfort in being able to give back to her in a very indirect manner, to where some people never find that space. You know what I'm saying? And so unfortunately, they felt they missed something. They move on to their adulthood life, and then they're going to quote unquote live their best life. I have my own special feelings about that phrase, but it is what it is. But so that's just my perspective of childhood deprivation, and whatever another person's experiences or thought is always welcome, because my experience, even though they're similar, they're not exactly the same. So with that being, I'm sorry.
I was just saying I agree.
So, with that being said, it's that time. Bittersweet. Again, I want to thank everybody who's joined us tonight. And they were right. This is going to end up going over to another week, because we ain't even got to the other good stuff that we were supposed to talk about. And so next week, we're definitely going to lean in on attachment in relationships, because I think that's the manifestation of all of these different aspects of childhood trauma. And what I'm going to do is I want to, and I'm telling them up front in front of all you guys, we're going to kind of break attachment down in detail and talk about it specifically and how that looks. Because I think we as adults, we need to understand, the younger adults who are in attention, who are attentive, they need to understand it as well. And if I had known then what I actually know now, I think I would have been so far advanced. So I want to make sure that we talk about that. But again, thank you for everybody who's participated, everybody who's been adding value to the chats. I want to make sure that we honor you guys. And so again, if you feel like this conversation will help somebody, by all means share it, and continue to hit the like button. We like the likes, and the algorithm like the likes as well. And if you feel so inclined, go ahead and turn the like into a love. We appreciate it as well. So we're gonna do final thoughts. I'm gonna do it differently. I didn't put nothing in the chat, so everybody trying to figure out how it's gonna happen. So I'm gonna start from the bottom. I'm gonna start over here with the son of Timothy, and we're just going to swing it all the way around. So we're going to go Timothy, Chris, then we're going to go Uncle Junior, and then we're going to go to Mr. Roland Walker. So with that being said, gentlemen, get ready, because we're about to dive into this. So first up, son of Timothy.
Uh, I know these brothers about to hit it. They're about to give y'all some great points. So all I'm gonna say, my motto in life, dealing with a lot of stuff growing up, and and it's crazy sometimes. I look back and it's like I forgot that I had trauma. But if you would have met me at 25, 26, 27, I was still a product of a lot that I went through. And my motto in life had to become this: I had to learn how to live in spite of. And I think I said that before in another session, but that's just real to me. Um, Even though we have to deal with things, we have to learn how to process things, we have to learn how to seek help, but we have to learn how to live in spite of. And it's a hard task. I even found myself, in my relationship, I realize I project some adulthood trauma, some relationship trauma from past relationships, but I have to learn how to live and how to be a successful husband, uh, a successful employee, or whatever that is, in spite of what I've gone through. So if anybody needs to hear that, you can live regardless of what you went through, and not just survive. You can live without without worrying about what you went through. And what I mean by that is, it does not define your success. It does not define your relationships. It does not define uh, your progression and your education on your job. So just keep pushing, keep thriving, man, and keep seeking the Most High, and get you a corner. You got this.
You're muted, bro.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? All right, we good. I guess my final thought would be, it's okay to try to figure out your traumas. It's okay to figure out where they came from. It's okay to address them. It isn't disrespectful. It isn't any of those negative connotations that it's been given. It's a part of something that you need to grow as a person, male or female. It's okay. Listen to that feeling that you have in your gut, or that little voice in the back of your head that's telling you that something isn't right, and address it. You have to, in order to grow. That would be my final thought. Do it. It sucks. It's hard. You're not going to like the way you feel. You're not going to like the fact that you allow some of this stuff to happen. You're not going to like the fact that you wasn't in control of what happened in the first place. But you have to deal with it, and deal with it the best way that you know how. Nobody can tell you how to deal with your traumas because they are your traumas. You went through them. You know what they've done to you. So let's figure it out. And I'll leave it at that.
I will start off saying that not for everybody, but I think that I'm just going to focus on like just the overall support piece of this. I think in self-care at the same time. So I think first that people need to, if you're dealing with trauma or if you've dealt with trauma and you're an adult, I think one of the first steps is to go and get some sort of counseling. Counseling is going to help you from where you were a long time ago up until now. I think it may be a good, effective tool if you go and get you a coach. There's the mindset coach up right there. I'm sure the link will be at the bottom. Maybe you can hit them up. And coaching is going to help you from where you are right now and going forward. And then I think you need to have a good support group. So I think that with the combination of those three things is where you can start building a more, not necessarily trauma-free life, but a trauma-free life and be able to deal with a lot more of the trauma that you've dealt with and help you overcome some of those things so you can continue to progress and move forward. And that's my final thought.
I think that when you look at traumas, we should stop looking at traumas, engaging them, whether they're good or bad. Look at traumas as simply experience that helped build me to where I am today, so that we won't look at certain things as beneath us simply because we didn't experience them. And when we look at them as building blocks, blocks are something that you can remove or replace, because some of those things you can replace with something more positive. And we need to find those things that we may have thought, because being from Detroit, we always thought, oh, we the murder capital of the world and all that other stuff. We thought that was a positive, but it's always been a negative. But you need to replace those type of traumas that you grew up with and thought were norms. You need to replace those with some positives, and find yourself some mentors. Find yourself people doing some of the things that you want to do, that you can see yourself doing. And they aren't perfect. You aren't perfect. But when people are around you that can love you through situations, it makes a world of difference going forward. It makes a world of difference when you're talking about allowing you to see stable environments where children are raised, stable environments where people can learn, where people can be themselves, where people can heal from whatever has hurt them in the past. You need those environments, and you need to seek those environments out. As Uncle Junior said, therapy, sometimes people can't afford therapy, or you just don't want people in your business. Find somebody that you can actually talk to and get real with them. Get butt naked real with them. But you got to trust that person, and that's somebody has to be trustworthy. And that's all I have.
Get real, but don't get real butt naked. Listen, you heard a lot of great talking points, a lot of transparency that took place here tonight. And I don't want to beat a dead horse. You heard me read the 20 common personality traits of family trauma. That should have opened the door to let everybody understand that whatever it is that you've been through, whatever it is that you're holding on to, whatever it is that you've compartmentalized and you're afraid to share it, like you're not alone. That's the biggest thing to understand. Everybody has gone through something, but here's the best part about it. Whatever it is that you've been through, you are still here. That's the most important thing. You are still here. It may have damaged you, but it didn't break you. And if it didn't break you, that means you can do what Queen V said here. And she said she took her trauma and she turned it into positive and it made her stronger. That's the thing that everybody who is listening to this, everybody has the ability to do that, right? I want to make sure I'm stressing that. Everyone has the ability to do that. But the first thing you have to do is you have to root out that prideful nature that makes you feel that you need to hide it. That pride is the thing that is standing in between the pain that you're holding on to and the joy that exists on the other side of it. You heard Roland talk about you heard Roland and Uncle Junior mention you need to release it. Go find somebody to talk to, counseling, coaching. I think for me, in my opinion, coaching was the most important thing that I did because counseling just kept me recycling that same information. You got to get to the point to where you get beyond it, and imagine what life can be for you. You hear Chris express a lot, and I love the fact that he does it because he is transparent with what he's dealing with. That's the point that we're talking about. We all got to get to that point. We all got to get to that point to where we cast down that pride, and then we get to the point to be completely honest with ourselves. Surround ourselves with individuals who love you enough to be honest with you. Don't surround yourself with people to tell you the things you want to hear. Surround yourself with people to tell you the things you need to hear, because those are the people that really care about you. Understand when you're in unhealthy relationships. If people only want you in their presence when you can do things that they want you to do, that's not healthy for you. It should be a symbiotic relationship that involves reciprocity. It should be where we care about each other and feed into each other. I should be championing you to be the best version of yourself and vice versa. If all I'm doing is championing you and you're not championing me, then I need to go back and analyze the relationship that I'm in. That's reality. And I talk a lot. We have to understand the difference between the truth and facts. And a lot of times we have existed in a space to where we have jaded our reality to believe that our facts is the truth. And then we'll turn around and call it my truth. You don't have a truth. There's only one truth. And he told you that he's the way, the truth, and the light. So I want to lay that on the table because we got to rework, right? We got to rework the information that we've been holding on to for all these years. It is imperative that we do it. So I've rambled on long enough. I just want to go back and say I thank each and every one of you. I also have one more announcement. I want to make sure I'm saying this. So tomorrow morning is going to be a busy morning. I'm going to be up 8 o'clock in the morning with Uncle Junior, right? Uncle Junior, if you don't mind, brother, put the link in the chat so that everybody can be aware of it. And in fact, let me turn it over to you and let you tell us about what's happening tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock.
All right, tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, we got the gray beards and the black beards, right? So we got myself, we got Coach, and we got Rolling Down the Street. We are getting with 3 other guys from a different generation. These guys are in their 30s, early 30s, and we're going to cross-contaminate. You know what I mean? So we're going to have cross conversation. We're going to talk about different things. We're going to talk about some of the pros and cons of being old versus being young, why we don't get along, what the disconnect is, all of those different things like that. So tomorrow morning, the Uncle Junior Network, link in the chat, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 8 a.m. Cross-pollinate, like Roland just said in the chat, so the private chat. So yeah, cross-pollinate.
I like the idea of
Hope to see y'all
cross-pollination.
there.
So yeah, it's going to be a great conversation. We actually talked with those young men before, and phenomenal young men. So if you got a young man in your life, that might be the conversation that he wants to be on, because these brothers are sharp. They're what, Marine officers? Used to be Marine officers, all business owners right now. So yeah, man, it's going to be a great conversation. And then at 10:30, I'll be on the call again with Onita, and we're going to talk about the 5 keys to increase personal competence. This is an aspect of emotional intelligence. So again, that might be a call that you want to be on again. So again, 8 o'clock and then 10:30. So it's going to be a busy morning for me. I look forward to seeing each and every one of you next week. Thank you for all of the value that you've added in the chat. Shout out to all of you. And I see my main man, Bertram Reed. Good to see you again, brother. And thank you for joining the show. Listen, next week, same time, same day, same place. We're going to have the Hearts of Men podcast, doing it again, and we're going to continue with finishing up this conversation on childhood trauma and how it affects your adult life. So with that being said, have a great evening, phenomenal weekend. We look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow and definitely next week. Be blessed.